There it is. Man, we can hear your
Yeah,
background music.
yeah. Hold on one second. I'm all technology challenged. Can, can I just say, hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast, by the way, since we neglect to do that usually. And can I just say that the mind-numbing two-step verification process that exists for every single login that a guy has nowadays is just like it's insanity. I can hardly take it. Like, and so that was one of my faux pas there too. I was logged into that other thing over there that was broadcasting while it went live.
Right.
So it's
Yeah,
a
there's got to be something. This is 2024, man. Almost 2025. We got to come up with something different. Something's got to give.
it is something. I'll tell you what.
I
Well,
think
how
it's a
are you
blast.
doing today, Mr.
I,
Coffman? How are you doing
I'm
today?
great, but I'd say it's a blast watching you melt down sometimes.
Well, this was mild compared to some of them too, by the way. But I we the people can't see the text that I sent you about the bullshit that
Right.
I now I got to figure out how to do whatever they want me to do. Like,
Oh yeah, it's in my brain. I can just close my eyes and just see your head explode. It's great.
that's right. There's some guy somewhere down in this Google bunker in the Pacific Northwest somewhere, just laughing his ass off
Oh
about
yeah,
the hoops he makes people jump through. Like he probably is recording that somehow in his archive there or whatever. It's like,
for
you
sure.
know, or it's Skynet. I'm not sure which one
Oh,
of the
it's a
one of the
combination of all that. All right, guys. Hey, welcome to the podcast. My name is Jeff Coffman. I'm joined by my co-conspirator over here at Sub2 Empire, Mr. Ken Rossics. And I just got a real quick question for anyone that watches this. Who here loves your job? Who absolutely loves it? And there's nothing wrong with loving your job. Totally okay. But if you don't love your job, this is going to be the topic of our discussion today. I want to talk about. I'm going to give you some pointers on the absolute fastest way to get out of your 9 to 5 job. Now, I'm going to, we're very transparent here. I'm just going to tell you, I just gave a presentation on this very topic at the Gateway to Freedom concert here. I don't know, it's about a month ago. And I just thought we should probably go over this. I think this is stuff that people need to hear. That, we're often, I believe, misled by a lot of the gurus out there, and we'll get into it a little bit further. But I think the formula for how a lot of gurus are teaching people to get out of their 9 to 5s, I think there's flaws in it, like fundamentally just bad advice on how to actually make that happen. And I can speak to it because I followed those rules. I followed a lot of what a lot of gurus said, and it turned into. Now it doesn't turn into to this for everybody, but for me, it turned into a lot of pain and heartache. I mean, it involves having rental properties and dealing with, kind of paying your dues with tenants and toilets and trash and all that stuff in the beginning. And I don't know. If I had it to do all over again. In fact, if I had to do it all over again, I would definitely follow what we're about to go through here. So, what about you, Ken? Are you what was your experience on that? I know you took a totally different path. Like me, I had a W-2, and I was just like, I got to get the hell out of this thing. So I jumped into this other thing where you actually retired from a W-2. So a little bit different path. Yeah.
Well, so let's go back to the first real estate thing. So as you mentioned, the gurus, it's like get you some rental properties, get you some cash flow too. So that's what I did at the beginning, 20 plus years ago now. We still have a couple of straight rentals. Like I'm still a landlord, but yeah, dealing with the tenants, trash, and toilets is a little different. So I got disenchanted, right? With human resources can burn a guy out fast.
I'll
Right?
bet. Just
So
saying that sounds mind-numbing.
I got disenchanted with that going in, but I knew I was close enough to, like, I had put enough years in it, and it's like, okay, where is my retirement threshold so that I can then have that cash flow for the rest of my life? And so I used and then so I found out what that number was. And then I also found out I could purchase credit to get to that number. And so real estate did that for me. And it was actually flips. So I kind of changed changed our business model a little bit. And we really focused on the flips because I needed the cash to buy the credit, right? So that I could get out. And so that's what I did in there. So my model, but if I had to go back, what you say is exactly right though. If 20 years ago I had seen this model and started to do the creative acquisitions and the creative models, and then I seller financed to people, which is what we're going to talk about today, seller financed instead of being a straight landlord, I think I probably would have more of those properties, because eventually I sold off the rental properties because I didn't want so many, because it gets too big for one person to manage. We were self-managing them, and you can have the management companies too. And we did that, and they suck, and all of that. So eventually it's like, okay, the depreciation on this, we've had this for 15 years. The depreciation on it is not great. So it's like, all right, I got to sell it off and I got to get another one. Right. But the seller finance model kind of addresses some of those things, and you can hold them literally for 30 years if you want, if that's what it comes out to be. So I think you're totally right. I would have done things differently from a buy and hold perspective if I had started this, if I had looked at this first 20 years ago, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the cat's out of the bag. We're going to talk about seller financing here. And, just kind of my backstory on that, it's no secret that I was in a job that I just could not stand. I mean, I literally, I was cursing everybody out every day. I mean, it's just, I'm a totally different person than I was back then, because I was an angry guy. I was a really angry guy. But the seller finance model, and what we're talking about when we say that, for us, what I really like to do, my favorite model, and it's a model that I use in my business, is I buy stuff creatively. So whether that's subject to or owner finance or whatever that is, even bank financing, I'm not opposed to, but you do have to be a little bit careful there. So we'll pick up our properties. We acquire our properties using creative financing for the most part. Then we turn around and we sell or finance those properties to a buyer, to an end buyer, someone who's actually going to live in the property. And so I just want to maybe go over, or maybe just ask the question, why seller financing, why it's so popular, and why I think it is actually the better option for people who are just starting out or wanting to get out into get out of that active income category and get into the passive income. So, number one, let's just go ahead and address these now, Ken, if you don't mind.
You bet.
Number one, a massive buyer pool. It is estimated that roughly 50% of all prospective buyers, people who want to buy and own a home, cannot qualify for a mortgage.
Yep. And
I read, this was actually just prior to giving this presentation, but I read a full, I think it was 32 or 34% of every single adult who wants to own a home, or who would otherwise qualify to own a home, cannot get qualified simply because of credit scores. They have a credit score below, I think the credit score was below 6 in that particular statistic. I think it was below 650. Am I
620.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a huge, you think about, there's an estimated, I forgot how many minutes, 118 million people that are of adult age and can maybe even earn enough money to buy a property, but they can't do it because of their credit score.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a ton of folks. What happened here? I just lost there we go. Okay.
And can we let's talk about that a little bit more, because I think that's important. So let's go back to about only half of people who want to buy a home with traditional financing, right? Apply and obtain a loan, can do so.
Yeah.
Can get qualified. Some of it's the credit score, but some of it's not.
Yeah.
We're talking about there's a massive pool of these people out here, right? That paid their bills on time, that are good, that have good credit scores, actually, not just below 650 or 620, but have good credit scores that cannot qualify for a traditional mortgage because they don't have cash flow. They don't have the money in their bank account. They're business owners.
Right.
They're entrepreneurs, right? There's a lot of people out there, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, we're gonna sell or finance to some person that's got a 580 credit score, and like, okay, that's gonna be that's worse than being a landlord, right? Because now
Could be. Yeah.
once they stop paying, what the hell am I gonna do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We don't sell or finance to those people,
Right.
right?
Yeah. And yeah, I think, on top of that, there's just no market. So we basically we have two different types of loans. We have qualified and we have non-qualified loans, and you can go out and read Dodd-Frank. You can learn all about those things. But essentially, the only market that really exists are for people who are applying for qualified loans. You're not gonna be able to go up to the bank, your local bank, and say, "Hey, I'd like to qualify for a non-qualified loan," or "I'd like to get a non-qualified loan from you."
Yeah.
Nobody does that. There's no market for that, and that is really that's what we're talking about here. And just to be again transparent, the loans that I give. Now there are a lot of people that are not going to like what I have to say, but for me this works, and that's really all that matters, right? We're all in this for kind of individualistic aspirations or reasons. Um, Mine is, I'm a buy and hold guy. I don't care if I own a property or have to hold on to a property for 30 years. I really don't care. That's what I'm in this for. I'm in for the long haul. And so for that reason, I underwrite mostly non-qualified loans, meaning the notes or the contracts for deed that I create when I'm selling on seller finance are generally not marketable. I generally can't go out and sell those notes or those contracts for deed, which, by the way, you can sell. Um, but my point is that there aren't a ton of people out here offering these unqualified loans. Um, and by the way, for those of you that are going to turn your nose up at this, whatever, dude. Okay, I don't care. This is what I like to do. I think that going the qualified route is totally acceptable as well. It's just not my model. So I guess what I really want to get across is that on as it pertains to this is you have to do what you are comfortable with and what your business model or the business model that you created. So just keep that in mind. I'm not going to sit here and defend it. It's just what I do, and I like it. I love it.
Can I just clarify something there too? Because
Sure.
I think what you just said is important. So when we create seller financing, you can do that in two ways. Just like the bank qualifies everybody, so that's a qualified mortgage. But you, as a private lender, right? You're becoming a private lender. You can qualify the people too. Like you can underwrite the people. You can use an RMLO, and you can underwrite the people just like banks underwrite them, and that's totally fine. One of the reasons you want to do that, right, is to go through that process, is what you mentioned, Jeff, is that maybe I want to sell that note.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And there's very good models of where you can sell a finance in that, but you want to hold it. You want to hold the note. You're creating the note for the benefit of yourself or the contract for deed or what you're originating that loan, whatever the apparatus is, whether it's a wrap mortgage or whether it's a contract for deed, you're originating those and you have no intention of selling it. Like the only intention that you have is that like they might refinance out of it with a traditional lender and cash you out. Right. But you have no interest in that. So that's why you don't go through the RMLO process.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, to kind of just summarize this up, summarize what we're talking about here. It's all about opportunity here. And so number one, you have a massive buyer pool. I mean, it's enormous. It's huge. And so seller financing, whichever route you take, qualified or non-qualified, that's entirely up to you. The point is that to get into seller financing, it seems, for those of you that may be kind of new to the new to real estate, yes, seller financing can be there's a little bit more to learn. There's just more wheels turning. However, if you put in that little bit of effort up front and you decide, hey, I'm going to go down this path of seller financing, and we'll get into the benefits of that too. If you go down this path, this is, I believe it is the absolute fastest way to get out of that 9 to 5 and into a passive income, a sort of a passive income environment where you don't have to worry about going out and working every day. All right. Because, well, we'll get further into it, but I do want to move on, if we can move on.
You bet.
Because we've talked about before, those folks who have watched us or maybe followed us, we've always talked before about how we're able to, with seller financing, how we're able to create our own little perfect economy. Or I say perfect, some of them are not so perfect, but we get to create inside each deal. We get to actually create how much cash flow or how much of a back end payout we want. We get to do all of that stuff. We get to, and it's more like kind of on a dynamic basis. It's like, okay, we get this deal that comes through, but let's say it's sitting at 6 or 7% interest. Most people, and I'm talking about a subject to deal. Let's say we're buying a subject to deal and it's at 6 or 7% interest. Well, a lot of folks might look at that and go, that's not very attractive.
Yeah, margins aren't great, right?
Margins aren't that great. However, with seller financing, don't forget that you get to create, even though it's 6 or 7%, you might be paying 6 or 7% on that underlying loan, but you're able to charge your buyer, 3 to 4 points above that, maybe even more, depending on there's a lot of factors. But so the point here is that we get to actually create this environment, this financial environment through, or where we can actually increase the sales price because we're offering a premium service, meaning we're qualifying people who would otherwise not be qualified to go out and get a loan. So we can actually increase our sales prices. We get to create through this, through seller finance, we get to create our own monthly cash flow. So it becomes this thing. It's not like we're not beholden to the rental rates in the area necessarily, if that makes sense. We get to design this. We get to structure these deals so that we meet our minimum monthly cash flow requirements, simply because we are offering a premium service, and we have buyers who are willing to pay for that.
Yep. So
it creates a nice little, I keep using the word environment, but that's what it is. It's this perfect little storm in most cases. So I love it.
And it's great because it's the 3-prong model, right? You get paid. So when you sell or finance it too, you get paid 3 times. You collect a down payment, which you decide, right? It's 10. My rule of thumb is 10%. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can get a little less or a little more depending on the market or whatever. That's fine, but 10%. So you're going to get a down payment. You're going to get that monthly cash flow, as you just mentioned, Jeff, that we set and we determine. And we determine that based on what are the market rents. I like to go above the market rents because, as you mentioned, this is a seller financing. This is a premium that we're providing somebody who can't go out there and get a regular loan, right? Yeah. The traditional regular loan. So we can be at the top instead of down in the middle of the rental rates, right? Of course, it depends on the property, like 100 factors, but it depends on the property. And then you get paid off in the end, as you mentioned, because of the sales price. So the difference between what you're selling it for and what we acquired it at, that gap is eventually going to come to you, right? Yeah. It might be 5 years, might be 8 years, might be 30 years, but eventually you're going to get paid that gap. So.
Right. Yeah, that monthly cash flow, by the way, we call that I don't know if there's an actual official term for it, but I just call it arbitraging interest rates. That's all you're doing. You're just taking the spread between two different interest rates. That's all it is. So one of the other benefits to this seller financing thing, and this is a huge one. This is I think we want to spend just a little bit of time on this, because what I talked about in the very beginning of this podcast about how the gurus, there's a very, very standard, a standard plan for getting people out of their 9 to 5. It's a simple math equation is all that it is. It is acquire property. If that property needs rehab or fix up, whatever, acquire that property, fix it up, get a tenant in there, start cash flowing that property, and just rinse and repeat until you hit a point where your cash flow actually exceeds your W-2 income. And then supposedly you have freedom, right? We all have, that's the equation for freedom. It's what we're all told. And excuse my language, but I think that's bullshit. I think it's entirely, and I think it's just it's easier said than done. And the reason is because now I've done this, I've calculated this, and I've tested this out 6 ways to Sunday. And I'm telling you that 40 cents of every single dollar, so 40% of all the income you generate off of any one property is going to go back into that property.
Yep.
Now, in some cases, it might be more than that. And
at least.
What's that?
At least, yeah. At least
yeah.
40%.
I have very rarely have I ever seen it go below that, though.
Yeah, your expense to income ratio. Yeah.
Yep. So if you can imagine, let's say that you go out and you pick up a rental property, and the cash flow on that, now I'm talking about gross, obviously, but say that cash flow is $500 a month, which on the surface sounds great. Like $500 a month, I would do that deal all day. However, what they don't tell you is that whether through debt service, toilets, trash, all the repairs, maybe CapEx from time to time, that number is so deceiving, because if you've got that $500 a month in cash flow, you're really only going to be making, $260, $270 a month off of that property, because I guarantee you 40 cents of every dollar that you bring in off of that gross wise that you bring in is going to go back into that property. And the great thing about seller finance is, or one of the benefits is that once you create those terms that we were just talking about a few moments ago, once you create those terms, and of course you got to have a good buyer, you got to have a reliable buyer. You've underwritten a buyer who's reliable. Once you create those terms, though, those terms stay for the life of you. I say owning that property, but of the life of any particular deal. It stays that way throughout the life of it. So whether that's, if your buyer, if they refinance in 5 years, or they buy you out in 5 years, you've got the same amount of cash flow every month. Or if they extend it out to 30 years, you've got the same amount of cash flow. Now, that can also be a downfall, right? Because you're not really, like with rents, you're able to raise rents. With seller finance, you're not able to do that. But my point behind telling you this is the reason that seller finance, you can accelerate getting into that passive cash flow column through seller finance, it's because you have to buy less properties and not have to put any of that capital back into those properties. Once you create that deal, once you have that structure down, you can reliably, month after month, you can rely on that income, and you don't have to worry about unexpected expenses or anything like that. So this is why when I say that this is the fastest way to get out of your 9 to 5, it's because of this, because you don't have the expenses associated with rentals you don't have expenses associated with seller financing like you do with rentals. So, and you can really get to enjoy that monthly income without the landlord migraines. So, uh, yeah, I just now I'm not saying that. I just have a feeling that once you start doing these, these folks, once you start doing them, that you won't want to go back to any other way. Um, and especially if you're one of these folks who goes out and maybe you're a national buyer, maybe you buy in multiple states. There's just no way to manage rentals if you're buying in multiple states. Um, but this is why we say that this model is um, it is, and I would challenge anyone to argue this. This model is going from having a W-2 to getting the passive income you need to get out of your W-2. This is the fastest way to do it, for sure.
Yeah. Well, what you said there is so important, though. I might need to buy 25 rental properties. And by the way, you need to have some kind of line to send. So I need to net cash flow $300 a month on each one of them, or whatever, to get out of my 9-to-5. So I might need 25 or 30 of those. But with the seller finance model, I'm getting $500 or $600 a month, and I'm not putting 40 cents on every dollar back into the property or keeping it back. Right. And so I only need 12 to 15 properties to replace my W-2 income.
Which ironically is the same number that I hear over and over and over. You've been to, probably 100 real estate conferences. I've been as well. And that happens to be the number, generally speaking, depending upon, which area of the country you live in, obviously. But that always seems to be the number, 10 to 15 rental properties can get you out of your job. And I'm telling you, I think you at least need to double that number, minimum. Yeah. I think you would need at least 30. Where you're right, with seller finance, once you hit that number, that's it. I mean, you can just grow from there. You don't really have to, you don't have those unexpected expenses like you do with rental properties. So then we talk about some of the, I call these are supposed to be advantages, obviously, but sometimes there's some disadvantages to seller finance as well. The cool thing about seller finance, as far from a tax perspective, is that if you just buy a house, turn around and flip that house, and you never had the intent of turning that into a cash flowing asset, you are going to pay the most tax that you can possibly pay in not in just all of real estate, but all of business. You're going to pay the most tax on flip properties. Now, I get you're going to have expenses that you can write off and all that good stuff, but the income that you generate off of a flip property is taxed at ordinary income, right? So that's number one. Now, if you have strategies for reducing that tax liability, then good for you. But just know that right off the bat, it's an uphill battle. And then, so you've got ordinary income, and I forgot. I just zoned on what else I was going to tell you. To be honest with you. But with the seller finance model, since this is an installment sale, you actually get to defer those capital gains, just like you would if if you owned a property free and clear and you offered seller finance to your buyer. So now you get to defer these capital gains. You get to kick the can down the road on the tax you actually pay on it, and there's no ordinary income. So tax advantage wise, that's really the major benefit to selling on seller finance or selling on terms. But I think we need to talk about some of the disadvantages as well. And there are ways around this as well. There are things that you can do to kind of turn some of the negatives into positives. One of the negatives is that when you sell a property on seller financing, your buyer gets the depreciation on that property. So for whenever a property's sold, upon that sale, there's a clock that starts 27 and a half years. You take the purchase price of that property, you divide it by 27 and a half years, and that's how much you get to write off on your tax return um, over the course of that 27 and a half years. So I don't know, Ken, I can't do math right now. I'm not mathing anything, but you kind of get the idea, right? Did I explain that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. You're okay.
So then on top of that, your buyer also gets the mortgage interest deduction. You no longer get to take those two deductions, right? However, you can actually, since you are the bank and since you are the lender, you can actually negotiate that. A lot of people don't realize that. Now, I don't do this very often. Um, I only really ever do this when maybe it's a marginal deal, and maybe maybe I need a instead of taking $400 a month in cash flow, I take 250, but then I also will negotiate taking 5 years worth of depreciation or 5 years of the mortgage interest deduction to actually reduce my tax liability so that I make up for it. I make up for it there. That's really the only situation that I would do this in. But otherwise, to me, and Ken, you might have a difference of opinion on this, but to me, having to not deal with tenants, toilets, and trash, I am willing to give that stuff up. I just don't. It doesn't matter to me that much. I'm a cash flow guy, and if I don't have to deal with landlord problems, then I am totally willing to give up the depreciation and mortgage interest on these deals. What about you?
Well, I think it depends on how much. I think the cash flow depends, but I'm of the mindset that I want to pass through whatever tax advantages I can to my end buyer because they deserve that, just
Absolutely.
like any qualified buyer does. So let's take a step back though and say, if you're in a subject to deal, right? So we acquired the property on a subject to deal, and there's this underlying mortgage there. They're going to send you, and we're making the payments on it. They're going to send you that 1099 mortgage interest statement. Now you can deduct that. So what in turn then happens is that you have to send to your buyer a 1098 mortgage interest on that arbitrage difference that they can deduct, right? On your loan agreement, you have to send that to them there. So there's still some tax benefit depending on how you acquire the property. But the deal, on the contract for deed too, like the title doesn't officially change until, right, you make that last payment or you get paid in full there. So there's some continuing tax benefit there from a depreciation standpoint you could take. But on the wrap mortgages, the title changes and all that stuff too. So, but what you said is many people don't know that, right? Many gurus don't even say like you can negotiate how you need the property taxes, the insurance, all that stuff. You can negotiate that.
Yeah.
I don't like to do that. I just like to pass it on.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I think if you look at this from if you look at the deal in its totality, what you really want to do is you want to set your buyer up for success. You don't want to have to deal with this property later down the road. So there's no reason, if you can help it at all, you want your buyer to get, they're buying a home for a reason. They want these benefits. And so for you to, for someone who's offering seller financing to pull those benefits back for their own benefit, I just think it sets your buyer up. It's not a, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a special word. You're not really working together with your buyer to ensure the success. That's really what I'm trying to get at. And I want a reliable buyer who pays on time, and I am totally willing to give up a lot more, I think, than a lot of people actually, in order to achieve that. So,
but remember what's the end goal? I always like to say, and sometimes even you and I that are, I say veteran, experienced real estate investors sometimes lose sight of is like, what's your business objective?
Right.
What's the business goal? We're talking about creating a portfolio here that replaces your W-2 income so that you can get the hell out of working for the man. That's what we're talking about here. And so, right, whether we're going to worry about this tax deduction or that tax deduction, right? The goal, it's irrelevant to the goal. The goal is to replace your W-2 income.
Right.
Right. And so that's what we're suggesting. This is a much better system than buying 30 rental properties.
Well said. Yep, that's perfect. Yeah, and we're all told these. We're all given these kind of rental. I call them rental portfolio fairy tales, where you're the idea is you're supposed to go out and you find these insanely discounted prices. I'm talking about like some people won't buy rentals. Some people won't acquire properties unless they can get it at like at like 50 to 60 cents on the dollar. It just creates it's a really tough environment to operate in, to operate in. And, you're going to have these, I'm going to call it a dry spell. You're going to have spells where those types of properties, those types of deals are just not available. And so what does that do? That slows down that train. It slows down that momentum, where I can go out if I'm buying a property with creative financing, I can go out and I can find relatively decent houses, need very little work, and maybe even pass that work off to my buyer. But I don't have to concern myself with a ton of equity in these things. And I just think that is, and then because remember, I can then turn around and sell that to a buyer at a premium because I'm offering them seller financing. So I don't have to have those. I would love to. I'd love to be able to have a crap ton of equity in a house like right off the bat. I think it'd be awesome, but it's just not. Like I said, there's going to be at some point there's going to be a hiccup in that process, and you're definitely going to have a period where, man, I can't. Scratching your head, I can't find any good deals right now. Well, instead of going out and looking for those deals, go out and build those deals with creative financing. Mm-hmm. I think it's a little bit more work up front to figure this stuff out. And really this is where folks, here's my shameless plug, but it's where folks like us come in handy. You can lean on us for that. And we offer coaching for stuff like this. And this is what we do every day. So let's just roll down the list here. I'm not going to beat that horse to death. But one of the other thoughts here, as it relates to buying rental properties, is that there's this whole process. Generally speaking, if you're going out and you're looking for these insanely discounted properties, which is cool, which is perfect, but let's say you find one, right? You get it under contract. Now you've got to go out and you've got to borrow. Generally speaking, I'm not saying that this is everyone, but a lot of people are using hard money to buy these things because it requires a really quick closing, and a bank just cannot provide that fast closing that, or a traditional lender can't provide that fast closing that you need. So you go out and you find hard money, you buy it with hard money, and then you go out, maybe rehab that property, and then you go to your lender and you say, hey, I'd like to refinance this. I've got a hard money loan on this. I'd like to refinance it. Well, there's going to be all kinds of fees associated with that, or even if it's even let's say that property's ready to go, you buy it turnkey. Well, now you're going to have to put 25% down for that property. Now you've got a bunch of your cash in that deal. Whereas if you bought the property creatively and had these methods and this strategy to understand how to build or how to structure that deal on the disposition side, on the exit, it doesn't really matter that much. It's still going to matter. But you can buy these, if you can buy these properties with existing financing and then turn around and sell them on seller financing, now you can just create that. You can just create uh, your own awesome little financial environment. So,
right.
yeah. So, yeah, this is why I think that if folks are not, if they're not in the creative financing space right now, you just have to add this to your toolbox. You have to. I
Right.
mean, it's
Why not? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to. And here you are out here, everyone's fighting for all these deals, and it's just a really really tough environment out there. But if you just put in a little bit more effort up front to learn this stuff, I mean, you will by far surpass. I'm not going to call them competition, but you will by far surpass your other colleagues that are in this business, that are doing things the old traditional way. And I'm actually living proof of that. I've done quite well over the past few years, and it's all because of creative financing.
It works. Right? I
Certainly.
mean, so some people say, "Oh, well, that all sounds good and stuff." And yes, there's a lot of logistics involved, and you need to know what you're doing, especially if you're acquiring property subject to, right? That's why, and I'll go a step further with your shameless plug. That's why you need a coach, or you need to find somebody that knows what they're doing, so that you can figure that out for yourself and go do it, right?
Yeah.
Or if nothing else, if you're like your own hands-on guy, go get our subject to document package and go, and we walk through step by step all the CYA of all that stuff too. But
For sure.
but beyond that too, you're going to get stuck with, okay, now how do I find that buyer? How do I find this? How do I find that? Like that's where people like us come in handy. And if it's not us, it's somebody. Figure out how to put these tools in your toolbox. Like just like Jeff said, it'll be a whole new. Said it. If I knew this 20 years ago, it'd be a different story today, right? With the buy and holds that we have, and you know the cash flow and the models and doing all that. So don't wait around. Don't
Yep.
wait around is what we're saying.
Hey, let's since you're talking about that, let's give these folks a little bit of bonus. Let's we're about to wrap this up here. I mean, we've been going on for 40, or I feel like it's mostly me. It's been going on for 45 minutes. I'm just really passionate about the seller finance.
I just let you go, man. You're really passionate about the seller financing and
Sure
the market. And so it's just like, I got to let you go sometimes, brother.
Well, here's what I'm going to do. I want to pull up this PowerPoint. This is actually just one. It's just going to be one of the pages. I promise we're not going to go through this whole thing. But for those folks that might be on the fence of this because they don't know where to find these buyers, I am going to show you a little something that I'm not going to get too deep with it, but I want to show you some different resources for where you can actually find these buyers. I'm going to go through each one of them. So I'm going to try and make it as quick as I can. But I think there's some items on this list that a lot of people don't really think about when they're looking for the perfect seller finance buyer. So let me share my screen here real quick. I don't know which one's which. Nope, that's not it. Hold on.
It's at the very bottom. Yeah, you got it.
There we go.
Nice.
Okay. So this is not rocket science here. Okay.
This is gold though. It's gold. It's not rocket science, but it's gold.
But I think people get hung up on this a lot. People, in fact, I know through some of our own students that they get wrapped around the axle about where they're going to find these buyers at. I think the real issue is that a lot of these real estate investors who are, maybe not necessarily marketing people, which is probably something they need to adjust to and accept that they need to be able to market. But I think they overthink this. It becomes overwhelming and it becomes paralyzing. And so here are the top 10 places that you can actually go out and market for buyers. Number one is Facebook Marketplace. If you have a property that you're trying to sell on seller financing, you must put this. Facebook Marketplace has taken over Craigslist, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
And,
for sure.
and it is an absolute gold mine for finding buyers. This is the very first place that you need to post your properties for sale if you're offering seller financing. It's Facebook Marketplace. Period.
You got to weed through crap. You got to weed through the nonsense a little bit too. But yes, it's a good source.
You're going to have that with any of these resources. You're going to have to weed through crap. Facebook Marketplace probably more so than most, though. I mean, because they've got that autoresponder, the one that says, "Is this still available?" Like, that's all they do. They just hit, "Is this still available?" And then you never hear from them again. You're going to have a ton of those. The next one is the Facebook buy-sell trade groups. And really, I got this idea from, I'm not saying this is an original idea, but I got this idea from Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I used to work for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And, excuse me, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, although it was probably the worst job I ever had, they had a brilliant business model. And if you all know Enterprise Rent-A-Car, you know exactly what I'm talking about. These folks are in the neighborhoods. They're like tucked away in little neighborhoods. They're usually not some big commercial spot somewhere. Excuse me. And so these buy-sell trade groups are in neighborhoods as well. So if you bought a property in, let's say, if you bought it, we're in St. Louis County, or I invest a lot in St. Louis County. If you're in Florissant in St. Louis County, there are tons of buy-sell trade groups in Florissant, and you're advertising local. So people know, these folks know exactly where this property that you might have would be located. And so posting these things in the buy-sell trade groups is another great resource. Don't discount Craigslist. I know I just kind of dog Craigslist a little bit, but Craigslist still does work. It's still you definitely need to make it just part of your routine that you post your property on Craigslist. I know people actually right now here locally that do nothing but Craigslist, which I kind of find amazing. Next one on the list is Zillow, but you're not trying to sell a property in the sell section of Zillow, because you're just inviting a ton of real estate agents that are just going to light your phone up, and it's just going to be just looking for listings. It's just not I've just found that it's the juice is not worth the squeeze when it comes to the Zillow for sale section. Instead, post your properties in the rental section, but the wording in the rental section is going to be, you're offering seller financing. Property is available, seller will finance.
Yep. Qualified buyers. Yep.
Qualified buyers. Yep. The next one is the divorce list. I don't know how many people that I've talked to that have gone through a divorce. You got to think about this. If somebody gets separated, or they get a divorce, a lot of times their name is going to still be on a previous loan, right? And so that can be a problem, meaning the loan with their ex-spouse. So did I explain that clearly enough? I think I did.
Yeah, it could be a problem. Or they could have credit challenges because their spouse ran up the credit cards.
Correct.
Yeah, a typical divorce situation. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. But they're always looking for houses. So you can actually mail the divorce list, and you're not necessarily just mailing them, like say, hey, get on my buyer's list or visit my website for this. You can actually mail them flyers of the houses you have available.
Yep.
And it's a great little list. It's the same thing with the bankruptcy list. Whenever someone goes through a bankruptcy, they are absolutely inundated with credit card companies. As soon as that bankruptcy is discharged, they are inundated with credit card companies wanting to extend them credit. And that is for a reason. Those credit card companies are smart. They know that this person likely, particularly if it's a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, they know that this person has virtually no debt, or they're on a structured program where, in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, the folks who go through that are put on a repayment plan, but that repayment plan has to be is supposed to be, it's designed to be affordable for them. And so
Yep.
now it's supposed to free up these other funds so that they can actually go out and, just live life. So kind of the same as the divorce list. It's folks who maybe even have given up a house in the bankruptcy. Um, you know, you can look at this any way you'd want, but it's still a good list to mail to, just like the divorce list is. The next one is absolutely gold. It's gold because you can actually hit both sides of the coin on this one. So the absentee owners list. Let's say that you have a property, you've purchased a property, maybe you picked it up subject to. You purchased a property, but it's in an area that you don't necessarily care to own property in, or maybe it just needs too much work for you. Well, you can actually create a list off of the absentee owners list of all the landlords in that area. You can sell or finance the landlords,
Yep.
right? But then let's say on the other side of the coin, you've got a property that you would love to own, and you would love to be able to offer to a retail buyer. Well, guess what? You're not gonna mail the landlords. You're still gonna pull the absentee owner list, but you're not gonna mail the landlords. Instead, you're gonna mail the address of the property that the landlord owns. Right. So it's a really, really great list. It's a really great list to mail for seller finance deals.
So you're targeting someone else's tenant.
Correct. 100%.
To be your buyer. Yep.
Yep. Then we have Every Door Direct Mail, which is a nasty little secret. Every Door Direct Mail is a program offered by the Postal Service that they will mail particular routes. You can hit every mailbox on a particular route, and you get to pick that route, by the way. So what we do is we mail to apartment complexes. Now, about 5 years ago, I did this with major apartment complexes all over St. Louis County. I'm talking, we probably mailed, I don't know, probably somewhere 8,000 at a time, 3 different times, so probably 25,000 pieces of mail. And we grew this buyers list to about 3,000 people. 3,800, I think, is what it was. So it's an awesome avenue for finding buyers. Then, of course, your buyer website. By the way, all of these methods, you should probably be directing them to your buyer website. Probably the best way to grow your buyers list. But your buyer website, it's something really simple that you can send people to, and it's a very easy way to pull in buyers. And finally, bandit signs. I've got a picture of the bandit sign over here, and tell you, these are probably number one. This should be probably at the top of the list. I find more buyers using bandit signs than more qualified buyers than really anyone else. Because you think about it, think about the bandit signs on the seller side. Those usually are posted out there by wholesalers, right? Like wholesalers will say, I buy houses or we buy houses. Those types of signs, those are usually wholesalers. Well, what are wholesalers? Wholesalers are nothing more than motivated sellers, right? I'm trying to make a correlation here between motivated sellers and motivated buyers. If somebody calls off of one of your bandit signs where you're marketing for a buyer, you have to already assume that they're a motivated buyer because they're calling off of a sign.
Yep.
So
For sure.
yeah, they are definitely very, very good leads. They're probably the hottest lead I think that you can find, to be honest with you. Can't remember if there was, nope, that was it. Let me, oh, cool. It kind of got rid of itself. That was sweet.
I thought you hit the button to get rid of those. That was all good. So that was like buyer marketing gold right there. Like we have more marketing classes mainly focused on acquiring the deal on the seller side in our store too. But there's the bandit signs is like either direction. That's a very good one. It's $25. right?
Yeah.
Our bandit sign gold is $25, man. Go in there and grab that if nothing
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. Yeah. The bandit signs are just a game changer for, especially on the buyer side. I mean, you could get, that's disputable on the, if you're trying to find houses, but finding buyers is that's just simply the best way to go. It's the best option that you have.
So let us know what you think. If you want more detail about the different aspects, like we can go into much more detail, like you said about okay, well that all sounds good, but what about this? What about that? Like let us know. Put it in the comments and let us know, and we'll thanks. Just so you know, we're on break next week for Thanksgiving. By the way, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Hope
Yep.
have a happy and safe holiday wherever you are, and we'll see you back, I guess, in December. Is that right?
I don't know the exact date. Looks
Yeah.
like December 6th. Looks like December
Yeah, we'll
6th.
see you back at the end of the first week of December. Wow, 2024 is wrapping up. Are you ready?
Yep. Absolutely. All right, man. Thanks, guys. We will catch you guys later on. Sorry to end it so abruptly, but time is of the essence here, and it's getting late. So
Yes.
appreciate you watching. Take care, guys.